manufacturer's statement that the washer must be supplied with 240 volts overrides the installation book. Altering the wiring to convert the washer to 120 volts would void the warranty. The National Electrical Code (NEC) requires that outlets within 6 feet of water be GFCI protected. As a washer is a water-using appliance, it must be plugged into a GFCI outlet. Here are a couple possible solutions. Firstly, use a 240 volt outlet. Install a dedicated 240 volt outlet near the washer's location. This would conform to the manufacturer's requirements and provide the necessary voltage. Secondly, use a GFCI adapter. Purchase a GFCI adapter that plugs into a regular 120 volt outlet. Then plug the washer into the GFCI adapter. This would provide GFCI protection, but still require the washer to be wired for 240 volts. An electrician should perform any electrical work. The washer's electrical specifications, including voltage and wire gauge, should be followed carefully. Do not attempt to modify the washer's internal wiring without consulting the manufacturer or a qualified electrician. When dealing with electrical appliances and installations, safety and code compliance are paramount. It's important to understand the requirements for ground fault circuit interrupter (GFCI) protection, especially near water sources, and to address voltage mismatches correctly to prevent damage to the appliance and ensure user safety. GFCI outlets are designed to protect people from electrical shock. They monitor the current flowing in a circuit and quickly interrupt the power if they detect a difference between the outgoing and incoming current, indicating a potential ground fault. This rapid interruption can prevent serious injury or death. The NEC mandates GFCI protection in areas where water is likely to be present, such as bathrooms, kitchens, laundry rooms, and outdoor locations. This requirement is based on the increased risk of electrical shock in these environments. The specific distance requirements, such as the 6-foot rule, are intended to cover areas where water could potentially come into contact with electrical outlets or equipment. In the situation with a washer, the NEC requirement for GFCI protection within 6 feet of a water source means that the outlet serving the washer must be GFCI protected. This is regardless of the voltage of the outlet. The challenge arises when the washer is designed to operate on 240 volts, but standard household outlets are typically 120 volts. This voltage mismatch must be addressed to ensure the washer operates correctly and safely. One solution is to install a dedicated 240 volt outlet near the washer's location. This requires running a new circuit from the electrical panel to the washer's location. The circuit must be properly sized with the appropriate gauge wire and the correctly rated circuit breaker. A qualified electrician should perform this work to ensure it meets all applicable codes and safety standards. Installing a 240 volt outlet allows the washer to operate at its designed voltage, ensuring optimal performance and preventing damage. It also maintains the washer's warranty, as altering the wiring to convert it to 120 volts would void the warranty. However, simply installing a 240 volt outlet does not address the GFCI protection requirement. The 240 volt outlet must also be GFCI protected. This can be achieved by using a GFCI circuit breaker in the electrical panel or a GFCI outlet. GFCI circuit breakers provide GFCI protection for the entire circuit, while GFCI outlets only protect outlets downstream from the GFCI outlet. Another potential solution is to use a GFCI adapter. These adapters plug into a regular 120 volt outlet and provide GFCI protection for the appliance plugged into the adapter. However, this solution presents a challenge because the washer is designed to operate on 240 volts. Using a GFCI adapter would require the washer to be wired for 120 volts, which, according to the manufacturer, would void the warranty. Therefore, using a GFCI adapter is not a viable solution in this case. Modifying the washer's internal wiring to convert it from 240 volts to 120 volts is not recommended. This would likely void the warranty and could potentially damage the appliance or create a safety hazard. It is always best to follow the manufacturer's instructions and consult with a qualified electrician before making any modifications to electrical appliances. When dealing with electrical installations, it's crucial to understand the applicable codes and regulations. The NEC is a widely adopted standard for electrical installations in the United States. It provides detailed requirements for wiring, grounding, overcurrent protection, and other aspects of electrical systems. Adhering to the NEC ensures that electrical installations are safe and reliable. In addition to the NEC, local codes and regulations may also apply. These codes may have additional requirements or restrictions that must be followed. It's important to check with the local authorities to determine the applicable codes and regulations in your area. When working with electricity, safety should always be the top priority. Always disconnect power to the circuit before working on any electrical components. Use insulated tools and wear appropriate personal protective equipment such as safety glasses and gloves. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it's best to hire a qualified electrician. A qualified electrician has the knowledge, skills, and experience to perform electrical work safely and correctly. They can also ensure that the installation meets all applicable codes and regulations. In summary, when dealing with a washer that requires 240 volts and must be GFCI protected, the best solution is to install a dedicated 240 volt GFCI outlet. This will ensure that the washer operates at its designed voltage and is protected from electrical shock. Always consult with a qualified electrician to ensure that the installation is performed safely and correctly. Let's delve deeper into the technical aspects of this situation, covering important considerations for ensuring a safe and code-compliant installation. Firstly, understanding the voltage requirements is paramount. The washer is designed to operate at 240 volts, which is a common voltage for high-power appliances like dryers, ovens, and some washing machines, particularly those manufactured outside of North America. Supplying the appliance with the incorrect voltage can lead to several problems, including inefficient operation, damage to the appliance's internal components, and even potential fire hazards. Secondly, the role of the GFCI protection. GFCI outlets and circuit breakers are designed to detect ground faults, which occur when electrical current leaks from a circuit to ground. This can happen when insulation on wires is damaged or when water comes into contact with electrical components. GFCI devices quickly interrupt the circuit when a ground fault is detected, preventing electrical shock. The NEC mandates GFCI protection in areas where water is present because the risk of electrical shock is significantly higher in these locations. This includes laundry areas, bathrooms, kitchens, and outdoor locations. Thirdly, assessing the existing electrical infrastructure is important. Before installing a 240 volt outlet, it's crucial to determine whether the existing electrical panel has the capacity to handle the additional load. This involves calculating the total load in the panel and ensuring that there is enough available amperage to accommodate the new circuit. The electrical panel should also have a properly sized circuit breaker to protect the new circuit from overloads and short circuits. Fourthly, the proper wiring and circuit breaker selection. When installing a 240 volt outlet, it's essential to use the correct gauge wire and a properly rated circuit breaker. The wire gauge must be thick enough to carry the required amperage without overheating. The circuit breaker must be sized to protect the wire and the appliance from overloads and short circuits. The specific wire gauge and circuit breaker size will depend on the amperage rating of the washer. The NEC provides tables and guidelines for determining the appropriate wire gauge and circuit breaker size for different amperage ratings. Fifthly, grounding considerations are crucial. Proper grounding is essential for electrical safety. Grounding provides a low resistance path for fault current to flow back to the electrical panel, allowing the circuit breaker to trip and interrupt the circuit. The 240 volt outlet must be properly grounded to the electrical panel. This typically involves running a grounding wire from the outlet to the electrical panel. Sixthly, understanding the NEC requirements is important. The NEC provides detailed requirements for electrical installations. These requirements are designed to ensure that electrical installations are safe and reliable. It's important to consult the INEC and follow all applicable requirements when installing a 240-volt outlet. This includes requirements for wiring methods, grounding, overcurrent protection, and GFCI protection. Seventhly, professional installation is recommended. Installing a 240-volt outlet can be a complex and potentially dangerous task. It's recommended to hire a qualified electrician to perform the installation. A qualified electrician has the knowledge, skills, and experience to perform the work safely and correctly. They can also ensure that the installation meets all applicable codes and regulations. Now, let's consider the potential alternatives and why they might not be suitable. One option might be to use a step-up transformer to convert the 120-volt supply to 240 volts. While this is technically feasible, it's generally not recommended for high-power appliances like washers. Step-up transformers can be expensive, bulky, and inefficient. They can also generate heat and noise. Furthermore, using a transformer does not address the GFCI protection requirement. Another option might be to modify the washer's internal wiring to convert it to 120 volts. However, as mentioned earlier, this is not recommended because it would likely void the warranty and could potentially damage the appliance or create a safety hazard. It's always best to follow the manufacturer's instructions and consult with a qualified electrician before making any modifications to electrical appliances. Addressing the warranty issue. The manufacturer's statement that altering the wiring to convert the washer to 120 volts would void the warranty is a significant consideration. Modifying the appliance in any way that is not approved by the manufacturer can void the warranty, leaving you responsible for any repair costs. It's important to carefully review the warranty terms and conditions before making any modifications to the appliance. If you have any questions about the warranty, contact the manufacturer or a qualified appliance repair technician. Exploring GFCI adapter limitations. While a GFCI adapter can provide GFCI protection, it does not solve the fundamental problem of the voltage mismatch. The washer still requires 240 volts to operate correctly. Using a GFCI adapter would require the washer to be wired for 120 volts, which would void the warranty. Furthermore, GFCI adapters are typically not designed to handle the high amperage requirements of appliances like washers. This could potentially lead to overheating and damage to the adapter. Therefore, using a GFCI adapter is not a viable solution in this case. Considering the long-term implications. When making decisions about electrical installations, it's important to consider the long-term implications. Installing a dedicated 240-volt GFCI outlet is a more permanent and reliable solution than using temporary fixes like GFCI adapters or modifying the appliance's wiring. A dedicated outlet will provide a safe and code-compliant power source for the washer for many years to come. It will also increase the value of your home. Understanding the role of a qualified electrician. A qualified electrician has the knowledge, skills, and experience to perform electrical work safely and correctly. They can assess the existing electrical infrastructure, determine the appropriate wiring and circuit breaker size, and ensure that the installation meets all applicable codes and regulations. Hiring a qualified electrician is an investment in safety and peace of mind. They can also provide valuable advice and guidance on electrical matters. Emphasizing the importance of safety. Electrical work can be dangerous. It's important to take all necessary precautions to protect yourself from electrical shock. Always disconnect power to the circuit before working on any electrical components. Use insulated tools and wear appropriate personal protective equipment, such as safety glasses and gloves. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it's best to hire a qualified electrician. Let's discuss the specific steps involved in installing a 240-volt GFCI outlet. Firstly, planning the installation is important. Before starting the installation, carefully plan the location of the outlet and the route for the wiring. Consider the distance from the electrical panel to the outlet location. Also, consider any obstacles or obstructions that might interfere with the wiring. Secondly, gathering the materials and tools is essential. Gather all the necessary materials and tools before starting the installation. This includes the 240-volt GFCI outlet, the appropriate gauge wire, a properly rated circuit breaker, wire connectors, a screwdriver, a wire stripper, a voltage tester, and other necessary tools. Thirdly, disconnecting the power to the circuit is important. Before working on any electrical components, disconnect the power to the circuit at the electrical panel. This will prevent electrical shock. Use a voltage tester to verify that the power is off before proceeding. Fourthly, running the wiring is crucial. Run the wiring from the electrical panel to the outlet location. Follow all applicable codes and regulations for wiring methods. Secure the wiring to the wall or ceiling using the appropriate fasteners. Fifthly, connecting the wiring to the outlet is important. Connect the wiring to the 240-volt GFCI outlet according to the manufacturer's instructions. Ensure that all connections are tight and secure. Sixthly, connecting the wiring to the circuit breaker is essential. Connect the wiring to the circuit breaker at the electrical panel. Ensure that all connections are tight and secure. Seventhly, testing the installation is important. After completing the installation, test the outlet to ensure that it is working properly. Use a voltage tester to verify that the outlet is providing 240 volts. Also, test the GFCI protection to ensure that it is functioning correctly. Eighthly, labeling the outlet is crucial. Label the outlet as a 240-volt GFCI outlet. This will prevent accidental use of the outlet for 120-volt appliances. Consider alternative GFCI protection methods. While installing a GFCI outlet is one way to provide GFCI protection, there are other methods that can be used. One alternative is to use a GFCI circuit breaker in the electrical panel. A GFCI circuit breaker provides GFCI protection for the entire circuit, not just the outlet. This can be a more convenient and cost-effective solution in some cases. Let's consider the impact of using a 240-volt appliance on the overall electrical system. Using a 240-volt appliance will increase the load on the electrical system. This can potentially lead to overloading of the electrical panel or the service entrance conductors. It's important to ensure that the electrical system has the capacity to handle the additional load. Consider the benefits of energy efficiency. When purchasing a new washer, consider the energy efficiency of the appliance. Energy-efficient appliances can save money on electricity bills and reduce your carbon footprint. Look for appliances that are Energy Star certified. Energy Star certified appliances meet strict energy efficiency guidelines set by the Environmental Protection Agency (EPA), addressing potential future needs. When installing a 240-volt outlet, consider potential future needs. You might want to install additional 240-volt outlets in the future for other appliances or equipment. It's often more cost-effective to install multiple outlets at the same time than to add them later. Emphasizing the importance of documentation. Keep detailed records of all electrical work performed. This includes the date of the installation, the materials used, and the name of the electrician who performed the work. This documentation can be helpful for future maintenance or repairs. Finally, reiterating the importance of professional assistance. Electrical work can be complex and potentially dangerous. It's always best to hire a qualified electrician to perform the work. A qualified electrician has the knowledge, skills, and experience to perform the work safely and correctly. They can also ensure that the installation meets all applicable codes and regulations.